Hi, my name is Kip Rumens, sales rep for Travis Industries. I've been a sales rep for Travis Industries for 18 years, and I worked in the factory for 8 years prior to that. So I've learned the stoves from the inside out. We're going to cover the Lopi wood burning stove today, specifically the Endeavor. We're here at my house where I've had this stove burning for about 14 years. The stove still looks good, we take care of it, and it heats our home, especially when the power goes out. It does a great job for us. One of the things about this stove that it'll do is it'll heat the house evenly through its convection and radiant heat. We're going to show you several segments on the stove today. One is the radiant heat, the other is the convective heat, the door construction, the bypass damper, which is here on the right hand side of the stove, how the air control operation works, even to the type of fire brick that we use inside the firebox. And we'll also show you the secondary combustion and primary combustion inside the stove as we get the stove burning today. Next, we're going to show you some of the differences from the inside of the stove out. One of those differences is the fire brick. Fire brick is a major difference in the industry. There's two different types of fire brick used. One is a pumice brick, which is lightweight. One is a kiln-fired brick. This is clay-based, kiln-fired, and it's designed to last the life of the stove. This is a volcanic pumice held together with cement. The cement breaks down in the fire and the heat of the fire, and it ends up becoming a service component replacement for you, the consumer. The Lopi fire brick weighs in at 57 ounces. The less expensive brick weighs in at 29 ounces, almost half the weight. So big difference is this saves the manufacturers a little money in shipping, and it becomes, again, service component for you. Just not as good a product for inside the stoves to last the life of the stove. The other thing some manufacturers use is they use this fiber board. Fiber board inside the firebox deteriorates on the binders, and it also sits right up in the baffle area. So when a chimney sweep sweeps your chimney, you got to remember to take this out. If you don't, chimney brush goes right through it and you got a big hole right in your lithium baffle board. On a Lopi product, the whole baffle is made out of the kiln-fired clay-based fire brick. So the real fire brick is what we use inside our stove. There's also another type inside some stoves. It's this blanket stuff. It's kind of an insulating blanket, sits up on the inside of the stove. It's supposed to design to hold more heat down on the inside of the stove, but again, it deteriorates, the binders are what fall apart, and it becomes a service component for you. Again, tried and true fire brick, designed to last a lifetime. You can feel the weight difference. You can hold the two in your hand and feel the weight difference. See your local Lopi dealer. Sometimes they have different products out there, and you can feel the weight of the two bricks, the difference. Big, big difference. One of the aspects of the Lopi construction is that it's made a little differently than most manufacturers. Not only is it a radiant constructed stove, which means like an old cast iron stove that just had one area of the stove that the fire burned on the inside and it radiated heat out. Lopi has also got a second jacket built around the stove that convects the air around the firebox. Convection is just the process of moving air around the firebox naturally to get the heat to flow into the room. So we take this heavy gauge 5/16 firebox, 3/16 on the unibody portion of the firebox. The unibody means face and sides are one piece of material. So we take one piece of material, kind of like a C shape, and we take a back bottom piece, put it together, then we weld a top on it. So this firebox is made out of only 3 pieces of steel. That keeps the integrity of the firebox, no seams, it's all welded together, so there's no seams left over. The convective area is then built around that firebox. This is the outlet for the convective air here in the top of the stove. The inlets for the convective air are right down here in the bottom. Air is basically, cool air is always down at your floor level. That's why your feet you feel the cold down at your feet. Well, that cool air is brought over to my stove as the stove is burning. As that stove is heated up, that cool air is naturally drawn into the stove. As it goes up the back chamber of the stove, that air gets hotter and it rises quicker and it expands. So as it expands, it's looking for a place to come out. So it actually comes out here. So the more it expands, the more air it pulls in. So it's always got this process going. When I get the stove burning later, I'll give you a demonstration with just a lighter and I'll show you how the air gets pulled in the bottom and then pushed out the top. It's a pretty neat demonstration. But what we're always doing is moving air into the room where the stove is and the hot air out. Because if I just have the stove going in here, just like an old cast iron stove of 30 years ago, it just gets hot in this room. Well, I want to bring cool air to the room, push the warm air out, making myself more comfortable and making it further away from the stove, making it more comfortable in the home as well. The Lopi stove has got several areas of construction that really stand out from the competition. One of those areas is the door construction. Door construction looks like anybody's door on the outside, except it's got some unique designs to it, that it has these nice areas of bosses in here with this return. Just has a real classic, timeless look to it, very traditional look. When you open up the door, one thing that you'll notice on the inside of the door is that it has a cast iron frame around the inside, as opposed to clips that hold the glass in on other manufacturer stoves. There's also, when you look at the hinge construction here, the cast iron frame that you see on the back side is part of the hinge system of this door. Down here, this is cold rolled steel for the hinges. There is no weld on the outside of the firebox like other manufacturers. It's actually welded on the inside. Gives us a stronger weld and a much cleaner look on the outside of the firebox. You don't see a weld, you don't see any of the weld splatter out here. Very clean. The door construction itself is built so heavy, I call it the over-engineered door. And the reason why is I can actually get up here and I can sit on this door. And this door, I can take my feet off the hearth, I can sit on it. This door will not warp, will not sag, and that's because it has cold roll steel on the hinges, not mild steel. So it's really overbuilt, not just from the door construction, but from the hinge construction as well. Feel the door for yourself. You can feel how heavily constructed it's designed. You can see the cast iron retainer for yourself on the back side, and the brass latch here that latches against the back of the unibody on the stove. Gives a real clean, full opening view of the fire for being able to get wood inside as well. Some manufacturers do not use this type of a latch system. They use the old bent steel rod where the handle actually goes through the door and they just bend the rod around. So we don't use anything like that in our stoves. Take a look at the hinge pins. Again, this door is second to none. It's the best, heaviest built door in the industry. One of the things that make Lopi wood stoves different from the older stoves is secondary combustion. Secondary combustion is air injection in the top of the firebox, and that air injection is reburning all the smoke, the gases, the creosote before it exits the flue. So you're producing off of heat off of the stuff that used to go up the flue with your old 20-year-old stove. So if you've operated an old stove for a long time, probably did a pretty fair job of heating, but you probably burned more wood than you would have liked to have burned. Today's units will cut down that wood consumption, give you a cleaner, hotter fire, cleaner glass, and less pollutants into the atmosphere, which is good for all of us. One of the ways they do that is that secondary combustion I was talking about. There's 3 tubes in the top of the firebox, and they have small holes in them. They're stainless steel in the Lopi, and those tubes get preheated. As the air gets drawn out of those holes and up into the chimney, it reburns all the stuff that was coming off of the wood that was gonna exit the flue. So now we reburn all that stuff instead of just letting that go up the chimney. There is a perforated air wash here. The perforated air wash brings preheated air down across the glass. This is different on a Lopi than most other manufacturer stoves. Most manufacturers use a solid piece of steel here and the air just flows over it. The problem is the air is coming up from both of these corners and it flows typically towards the center. When we put a screen on here, it's no different than when you put a screen on the end of a hose. The water in that builds up pressure and that water goes further and faster when you put like a hose bib on the end, like a nozzle, like a water nozzle. Nowadays with the screen on here, it diffuses the air evenly across the entire surface of glass so you get a really clean air wash. Even if you burn a low temperature fire, even maybe you got some wet wood and you get some stuff built up on the glass, burn a hot fire, it'll actually bake it right back off again. No different really than a self-cleaning oven. Lopi wood stoves utilize one air control to control the fire. This controls primary combustion and secondary combustion, which is that reburn that reburns the smoke and the gases inside the firebox. So this control here, when it's all the way in, it's shut off, pulled out, it's all the way open for a full-on fire. We also have another control on the stove on the side back here. It's called a bypass damper. A bypass damper, when you pull out on that, that lets the stove breathe. All the air goes to the back of the firebox and directly up the chimney instead of out in the room to open up when you open up the door. If you've ever owned an old wood stove and you have to open up your door slowly, let it breathe a little more, try to let it breathe, and hopefully smoke doesn't come rolling out into the room, the bypass damper is going to be your best friend. Because you open that up first, gets all the heat going right up the chimney for a smoke-free reloading. Also is a big advantage for startup. When you're starting your stove, let the heat get in the chimney, let the chimney get nice and hot. That gets a great draw going. So it's very easy to get a draw established inside the stove and also for that smoke-free reloading. Again, that's a unique feature on any medium and large low-pi wood-burning stove. Starting your low-pi stove, a couple of things come into play. Number one thing that comes into play is dry wood. What is dry wood? Well, talk to your local low-pi dealer, but typically anywhere around the country, 6 to 8 months, undercover, split, stacked, covered on top, not on the sides. That's going to be dry wood. Different woods do take longer to dry than others, but again, talk to your local dealer in your area. He'll be able to tell you what's best, what kind of wood burns the best in your stoves. We're burning dry maple here. One of the things about the stoves when you start them, on most stoves, you open up an air control, and that's about it. Stack your wood. On the Lopi Endeavor, we can go front to back because this box is 19.5 inches deep front to back. We've got some crisscrossed on here, so we got some nice air gaps in here. We've also got the advantage that we've got our bypass damper open. Remember, the bypass damper is going to let the heat go directly up the chimney, not come towards the front of the stove, so that's going to give us a quicker startup. Put a few more pieces of wood in here, and we're ready to go. Light the fire starter. Now when we close the door, we're actually not going to latch the door. We're going to give it a little bit of boost air, and that helps the fire start a little bit quicker. Now after just a few minutes of the fire getting established, go ahead and just latch that door and let it just take off by itself. Right now, both the controls are still open. The air control is still open on full open, and the bypass is as well. It takes about 30 to 45 minutes to establish a good temperature in the chimney. And again, that depends on your wood, to get that chimney really hot so the stove is really pulling strong for you. That gets the preheated secondary combustion heated up correctly, and that gets the air wash heated up correctly too. So don't shut down the bypass damper too soon. Let it really establish that draft for you. It'll make a big difference as the stove gets heated up and how well it's going to work for you during the course of the day. Let's talk a little bit about sizing the stove appropriate for the size of the house. If you buy too big a stove for too small of a house or too small of a room that's too closed in that the air can't get out, this is my family room right here, and it goes out into my dining area and then out into my kitchen as well. It's all open right through here, and it's about a 9.5 foot ceiling. So the air can just move out into those other areas so I don't get too heated up in this room. But if you get too big a stove, what typically happens is you end up shutting things down because you get too warm in the room that you're in. So you shut it down too quick, you shut down the bypass, you shut down the air control, your windows get black, the stove's not really burning very good. You should never have to clean the window on the stove. Burn it hot, cleans it up. But if you can't burn the stove hot because you got too big a stove, you want to make sure you don't make that mistake. The old stoves, you used to try to get as big a log as you could inside the stove because it's the only way you could get it to burn long. This stove here will hold the fire for 8 to 10 hours. Again, the only variance is the type of wood that you're burning. Again, your local Lopi dealer will be able to give you some great guidance about the sizing of the stove, the model that's appropriate for you, and the length of wood that would be great for cutting size. Now this fire is just ready for the bypass damper to be shut down, but I wanted to point out, you can see where the air wash is really effective right now, where it's actually blowing the flames right back away from the glass, helping keep that glass clean. When I close down the bypass damper, now the flames are going to come a little bit more forward inside the firebox, and I'm going to go ahead and make the adjustment on my air control. As I start shutting down my air control, you start seeing how the primary fire at the base of the fire shuts down, but now it's the secondaries that are doing their job. So now we're reburning that smoke, creosote, and the gas that actually comes off of a new piece of wood before it goes out the chimney. Remember, this helps you burn less fuel, gives you a cleaner burn, which means less pollutants in the atmosphere, and I get to chop less wood. What I'm going to show you today is also how much control you have on these air controls today. I'm just going to take a piece of paper, crumple it up, put it right here in the front of the firebox in the hot fire, and show you how much control you have over today's wood stoves. When you shut down the air control, that paper will actually go out, and I'm just burning the gas coming off the top of the paper. We're not actually consuming the paper at all right now. That's how much control you have on today's Lopi wood stoves. Try that with your 20-year-old wood stove. You can't even control wood like that. Watch when I open it back up. Just bursts into flames. There's so much heat inside that firebox, but you have total control whether the air is going to the base of the fire or just to the secondary burn up there in the top. When it's time to reload your stove, remember, you've got this handle here to open up your bypass damper handle first. Again, we want to get the air to go to the back of the firebox, all the flames, all the smoke to go to the back of the firebox up the chimney. Open up your front air control. Again, that just lets air inside the firebox. It's all moving away from you. When you try this with an old stove, you always used to have to open up that door slowly so you didn't get a bunch of smoke coming out in the room. On a Lopi, the door opens clear all the way, and again, smoke-free reloading. That's real important in a house, so you don't have someone yelling at you that you're filling up their house with smoke. Once all the wood's loaded, close down your door. Your heat's already established in your chimney, so you don't need to leave your bypass open. So go ahead and close that down. Leave your main air control open. That'll let the wood get caught on fire, and then you're ready to bank your fire for the night. You can just close down your air control to your desired level. Because we're burning dry fuel, we're going to have a nice clean window with a fire like this, and we're going to be able to hold the fire in this for about 4 hours with that small load of wood. We're not really a full load of wood in there. That's a nice evening fire right there. Okay, I'm going to use an incense here to demonstrate airflow around the stove. By holding the incense down here at the base, you can see where the cold air would be drawn into the bottom of the stove. Up here at the top, you'll see where the smoke is actually blown out and away from the top chamber. So the cold air is going in the bottom, hot air is going out to the top. What that does is actually pulls cold air from across your floor of your room back into the room where the stove is, pushing the warm air out, so you get better airflow, better air circulation, and you get a home that's heated more evenly, and you get better heat distribution in the house. There's a fan option for this stove that would actually enhance that natural convection. So the blower on it, you'll actually move air further and faster into the room. Won't make the stove more efficient, but it'll feel more efficient, because further away from the stove, you'll feel that air moving a lot quicker, so you can warm up the house a lot quicker. We typically see fans added to rooms where they have vaulted rooms or larger spaces, or they're primarily heating with wood and they want to get that temperature going and they want to keep it circulated. A lot of people will run their fan at a low setting, so they don't have any air noise, but they still have that gentle air circulation going around their stove. One nice thing about the Lopi warranty is it's the best in the business. We have a 2-year factory warranty on all the electronics. That covers labor and materials for the first 2 years on any electronic part inside of a Lopi stove. That's your Lopi wood stove blowers. On the firebox itself, it's covered for 5 years, labor and materials, and then an additional 2 years on any of the replacement parts inside the stove, like angle irons and secondary combustion tubes. So all those things combined, it does break down to the best warranty in the business because it always includes labor and materials. Lopi wood stoves are great for heating the whole home, and they're also great for zone heating. Zone heating means we're going to heat a portion of the home instead of heating the entire house. We get a lot of customers over the years that say, well, I want to heat my main family living space, which your family room, your eating area, your kitchen area, kind of like what we do here at our house. And then they say, well, the back bedrooms and stuff, they can run a little cooler. I don't need to heat that whole space. I really just want to heat the main space I live in. I start a fire in the morning or I start one in the evening. Or there's the wood burner that wants to have a medium-sized stove like this, heat the entire 1,800 square feet of heating, get the full overnight burns, and that's the medium-sized and the large-sized stoves. Again, depends on your house. The insulation in your house can be a big factor, and also the climate that you live in. There's a couple of great tips I'd like to cover about burning your stove as well. First of all, don't ever clean all the ashes out of the firebox. Always leave 1 inch to 1.5 inches of ash bed inside the firebox. It's easier to start the fire, it builds up temperature quicker, and it'll establish a coal bed a lot quicker for you as well. So that's one of the nice things. About once a year, you want to check your door gasket. That's the rope that goes around the inside. That is a fiberglass weave gasket. You want to actually replace that about once a year. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 years out of that, but it will compact over time. And if it compacts too much, you'll start bringing air in around the door feeding the fire, and you won't have as much control on your air control. So on all wood stoves, you do need to replace that typically annually to semi-annually, depending on how much use your door gets as far as opening and closing. The other thing is your chimney maintenance. It's very critical that you have a chimney sweep. Inspect and clean your chimney at least once a season. So that's pretty normal, pretty typical, and again, you want to burn dry seasoned wood. Your local Lopi professionals have all these answers for you. Please consult your local Lopi dealer. They'll be able to fill you in on any questions you might have. As most of you know that have owned a wood stove, a big advantage on a wood stove is when the power goes out, the heat stays on. So not only is it backup heat, it's going to keep your family warm, and it's also going to provide you with a great cooking surface and warming surface on a Lopi stove. That's a unique aspect to the Lopi. Not only do you have the direct cooktop here that'll run at about 600 degrees, so I always recommend using a standoff like a cast iron trivet before you put your pot on there. Things might burn a little quick in the bottom of your pan. Up here is your warming surface. Remember, we have this convection chamber, so that's not the direct top of the stove. That's got that air circulating around it, so this doesn't run quite as hot. Right now we've got some chicken and rice soup cooking on top of the stove. It takes about 15 minutes to warm it up. You can also do mulling spices in a pan up there, or you can do some hot cocoa for the kids when they come in from outside. Great way to live with the stove is to utilize the stove and all the features and benefits it has to offer. If you go to lopistoves.com, you'll find some great ideas for recipes on our website. One thing to always consider is who's going to install the stove. I'm not qualified to cut a hole in my roof and not have it leak, so I hired a professional to do my installation. Your local Lopi dealer has their own people on staff or uses a qualified subcontractor to do all their installs. Some homeowners like to do it themselves, and if you do, the pipe manufacturers have some guidelines that you have to follow, as well as the stove manufacturer has guidelines you have to follow. As long as you follow those guidelines, shouldn't be a problem. One of the nice things about this stove is it does not require brick behind it. I can go 4 1/4 inches away from a regular wall. That's drywall or wood paneling, anything like that, with no protection, because it's double shielded in the back. Remember, we have that convection chamber in the back, and we have a heat shield. So because of that protection, the brick here is just for looks. Brick doesn't get warm. All the heat's coming off the front of the stove. So again, consult your local Lopi dealer about installation and what's going to work best for you. The Lopis are made at Travis Industries in Mukilteo, Washington. The factory's pretty interesting. It's 476,000 square feet of space under one roof. Material flows in one side and out the other. It's really streamlined. It's pretty incredible to see. They have laser cutters, plasma cutters, and the best thing about it, they have a lot of people there that care about making wood stoves. We've got a couple of guys there that have been there on the factory floor for 20, 25, 26, 27 years. We have some long-term employees there manufacturing those stoves for you, making sure they're safe, reliable, and they're ready for your enjoyment.